Hello everyone, hope all of you are doing well. The topic that we shall discuss through this video is question tag. Now, let us first try to understand the purpose of questions. Then we will move to question tags. Well, questions or interrogative sentences play an integral part in the way we communicate. Like from the morning till the time when we go to the bed, we ask a lot of questions. Why do we ask questions? Say, for example, I may ask, what is the time now? Who's the current chief minister of our state? Or what is the capital of India? With all these questions, what I was trying to do is that I was trying to get some information. So basically, we ask questions or we use interrogative sentences in our communication to ask, gather information. But at times, we also ask questions to confirm something which we already know. Say, for example, if I say, it is raining outside, isn't it? So, in that case, with the with this part of the sentence, isn't it? What I was trying to do is that I also know that it is raining outside, but I was trying to, trying to confirm it whether it is really raining or not. Before we actually start the topic question tag, we need to know about the auxiliary verbs in English. In fact, there are 24 auxiliary verbs in English, which you can see on the board. So these auxiliary, we need to have the concept of these auxiliary verbs to do question tag. Along with the concept of the auxiliary verbs, we also need to have the concept of this table while doing question tag. Well, this table, if you look at this table, there are 6 parts in the table, like first person singular number, plural number, second person singular number, plural number, third person singular number, third person plural number. Now, what we can see in this table is that this box, this, and this one, these 5 boxes are similar in terms of the use of do and does. Like with all these parts, like we use do with I, we do, you do, they do, names, or any other plural subject. If there is one more than one name or any other plural subject is there, we have to use do. But with this part, we have to use does. He does, she does, it does, and this is again a bit different in terms of the use of have and has. With this, and this, and this. With this we use have, and with this we use has. Okay. Now let us talk about the basic rule of question tag. As you can see on the board, there is this sentence, Hima Das is an athlete, isn't she? So the part up to the comma is called a statement, and the part which is after the comma is called a question tag. Now the basic rule is that if the statement that we have is positive, then our tag will be negative. And if our statement is negative, then our tag will be positive. Now, let us talk about the structure of the question tag. See, in a question tag, there cannot be more than 2 words. Now, you may say that there are 3 words in this tag. Like, you may say that this is not, she. But since you may say that there are 3 words here, right? You will say that this is not, she. Now, what we have done is that since the limit is 2 words, we have used the contracted form or the shortened form of is not. So we have used it isn't. So it is isn't. So that our tag remains confined to two words only. Now, out of this two words, one must be a pronoun that you can see here. You see here, if we look at the subject of the sentence, this is a noun, right? Himadas is a noun. What we have done here is that in the tag part we cannot use a noun, we have instead use a pronoun, she. Had it been a male subject, the subject had been male, we would have used he. Or if the subject had been any plural subject, we would have used they. Or for inanimate objects, we use it. Now, the other word of the question tag, another one should always be an auxiliary verb, which you have seen in the list of auxiliary verbs. Like I mentioned in the basic rules of question tag, that if the statement is positive, then our tag will be negative, and if our statement is negative, then our tag will be positive. Now, how do we identify whether the tag is positive or negative? Now, here is a list of negative words which, if any one of this is present in the statement part, then we have to consider that statement as a negative statement. The words like no, not, never, few, little, rarely, barely, scarcely, seldom, no one, nobody, hardly, etc. Now here you need to be a bit careful. Few and little are considered as negative words, but a few or the few is considered as positive. Similarly, a little and the little is also considered as positive. Only few and little are considered as negative. So now let us try to add some question tags to the given statements. Uh, First of all, we will talk about assertive sentences. I hope you remember what is an assertive sentence. An assertive sentence is a sentence which simply declares or states something. We also call assertive sentence as declarative sentence. Now, first of all, we are talking about assertive sentences. We will apply the steps. So the first thing that you have to do when you get a statement and you have to add tag to it. The first thing that you have to do is that you have to determine whether the given statement is positive or negative. So this statement, Sonu Sood is a savior, is a positive statement. This is step number one. We have identified that this is a positive statement, and uh, so that's why. So we already know that our tag will be negative here. So now, what do we do next? Next thing that we do is that we have to find the auxiliary verb. So we have already discussed the 24 auxiliary verbs that we have in English, right? So if we see in this statement, this is your auxiliary verb. So this auxiliary verb will come here. So it will be is. Now since it is positive, we have to make it negative. So it will be isn't. And Somu Sud, it's a noun. So we have to use a pronoun in its place. So it will be he. After that, we have to give a question mark. Now the second statement, my mother was not busy. Let us apply the steps here. Step number one, we have to determine whether it is whether it is a positive statement or a negative statement. It is definitely a negative statement because we have this word not. So our tag will be positive. Okay. Step number two, what we have to do is that we will find the auxiliary verb. So here the auxiliary verb is was. So since we already know that this is going to be a positive tag, we don't have to use not. It will be was, she. Now let us come to the third one. Kids like cartoons. This is obviously a positive statement. Now, the second step, we have to find the auxiliary verb, right? We do not have an auxiliary verb here. So what do we do now? The next thing that we know that we do is that we have to find the main verb. The main verb here is like. Now, after we find the main verb, what we have to do is that we have to identify its tense, whether it is in present tense or past tense. So, like, this is in present tense. If it is present tense, we have two options available for us. One is do, the other one is does. Now, the subject of the sentence is kids. It's a plural subject, right? So, with plural subject, we cannot use does. It has to be do. So, your tag will be don't, they. Since it is a plural subject, in its place we have used the pronoun they. Now, let us come to the fourth statement. Let us apply the steps here. This is definitely a positive statement. Next step, we have to find the auxiliary verb, which unfortunately we do not have here. So, we have to find the main verb. So, this is our main verb. And now, next thing that we have to do is that we have to find its tense. We have to identify its tense. Since s is added to this verb, this is in present tense. So when it is present tense, like I mentioned in the previous question, that if it is present tense, we have two options: do and does. Now, since this subject she is third person singular number, with this we have to use does. So it will be doesn't she. Now let's move to the fifth example statement. They helped the needy. Step number one, we have to identify whether it is a positive or negative statement. This is obviously a positive statement. So the next thing that we have to do is that we have to find the auxiliary verb, which is not present here. So if there is no auxiliary verb, we have to see the main verb. So here the main verb is helped. Next thing that we have to do is that we have to identify its tense. Now, this is past tense. How do we know this? Because of this ed. So it is in past tense. So when it is in past tense, we have only one option available, that is did. So since it is a positive statement, our tag will definitely be negative. So what we do here is that we write did not, didn't they. Now, let us talk about imperative sentences. Means how do we add question tag to the imperative sentences? So, as we can see in the board, there are three sentences. We'll try to add tag to it. Now, whenever you see an imperative sentence, your job gets easier. Like, look, let us see the first sentence. Please open the door. Let me remind you that an imperative sentence is a sentence which expresses request, command, advice, or suggestion. So please open the door, it's a request, right? So if it is an imperative sentence, we have two options available and we can use that interchangeably. So if we add in this sentence, please open the door, the tag that we add is will you or won't you. Both are correct, but you will use any one of this. In the second sentence also, your answer will be both will you or won't you. Now, what we get to know here is that if we are given an imperative sentence to add a tag to it, we don't have to, look for the statement like whether it is positive or negative. Then we don't have to find the auxiliary verb, main verb. These things don't come into play. What we have to do is that we have only two options available. We can use that interchangeably, will you and won't you. However, one thing that you have to keep in mind is that we cannot use the expression won't you with a negative command. Means whenever there is do not, we cannot use won't you. So the only option that we have in this case is will you. So imperative sentences are easier when it comes to adding question tag to it. Now, one important point to remember, and this point will apply whether you are adding question tag to an assertive sentence or an imperative sentence. See, immediately after the statement there will be a comma, and after the tag you have to use a question mark. Remember, we are talking about English grammar, this is not mathematics, so do not try to use any fancy mathematical symbols like is equal to or implies after the statement. It should always be a comma and a question mark after the tag. And more importantly, you should, while attempting questions of question tag, you should always write complete sentence, because there cannot be a tag without a statement. So always remember complete sentence, and you have to give a comma after the statement and a question mark after the tag. Now let us try to talk about some miscellaneous examples of question tag or miscellaneous rules. So let me give you a quick recap of how to add question tag to assertive sentences. What we know is that if we are given an assertive sentence, what we do is that first thing that we notice is that whether the statement is positive or negative. Then the second thing that we do is that we look for the auxiliary verb, and if we have the auxiliary verb, our job is done. If we do not have an auxiliary verb there, we look for the main verb, then we identify its tense, and based on its tense we use do, does or did, right? Or, and in case of imperative sentences, what we do is that we have two options available: will you or won't you. We don't have to follow any steps there, but we have to be careful that with negative commands, means whenever there is do not, we cannot use won't you, right? So now if you get a sentence with the expression let us, if you get a sentence and you have been asked to add a question tag to it, and you have this expression let us, so step number one is that close your eyes. Step number two, write shall we. So whenever there is let us, first step, close your eyes to thank the person who has given you the question, and then you write shall we. Now let us see a sentence with the expression I am. So if we apply the steps here, this is obviously an assertive sentence, so the expression, the steps that we apply is that first of all we determine whether it is positive or negative. So this is definitely a positive statement. Then next thing that we do is that we find the auxiliary verb, that which is am here, and we write am not I. In that case it will be considered as absolutely wrong. Whenever there is the expression I am, you have to write aren't I. It's not I am, you have to write aren't I. Or to be and at times in oral form actually ain't I is written, but aren't I is considered as more appropriate. So I would suggest you to use, whenever there is I am, use aren't I instead of ain't I. Now if you get a sentence with the expressions like everyone or everybody or no one or nobody, one thing is definite, that the pronoun that we use at the end of the tag will always be they. So this everyone or everybody gets converted to they. Now let us apply the steps here. So this is obviously a positive statement. Then we don't have an auxiliary verb here, so we see the main verb. So with and this is in present tense. So the options that we have for present tense is do and does. Now with they we cannot use does, so obviously it will be do. So it will be don't they. Your answer is ready. Similarly, with the expressions no one and nobody also, we always use the pronoun here as they. It will be they. So now let us apply the steps here. There is this is a negative statement because the word no one or nobody is here, so our tag will be positive. Then we do not have an auxiliary verb. We see the main verb saw. It is in past tense, so for past tense we have only one option available, that is did. So always remember that whenever the subject of the statement is everyone or everybody or no one or nobody, your that pronoun that you will use in the tag will always be they. Hope you have understood what we have discussed today. Thank you.